Aloha. Today I wanted to address a very important topic that is floating around. It's been floating around forever. It floats around in the root structure of the racism problem, the racism agenda, the identifying with who and what you are, the everything. It's how I'm seeing it. It's at the base of everything that we are speaking about in reference to the separation program, in reference to the desensitization program, all of the agendas, technology, the globe model, the Big Bang Theory, the monkey evolution program, the supremacy program. All of these thought frequencies is what they are, because you have to learn this. You have to learn, like, children aren't born racist. Children aren't born to be the way they become when they adjust themselves to this destructive, desensitized, inhuman society. And I wanted to share some examples of how this program gets thrown around, and really just kind of share my example, well, not my example, but my perspective on the entire thing, because it is very important to me, and I would feel for each individual to understand who and what they are to the depths of perspective, however that is. So I can only share my perspective on this, on the situation, in order to shed some light, or at least open the door to see how these doors get kept shut on purpose. Basically what the entire thing is, what I narrowed it down to, is this program of, I know you are, but what am I? This is like the Pee Wee Herman, childish sort of, I know you are, well, you did this, I know you are, but what am I? But you did this, I know you are, but what am I? That's what this program is. It's intellectually, it's like an intellectual, I know you are, but what am I? And the outcome from that separation, the outcome from that ignorance, the outcome from that not addressing these issues or looking at these topics is death, is blood, is genocide, is massacre, is the military industrial complex, is the prison industrial complex, is the supremacy program. All of these agendas that add up to the haves and the have-nots. Now, the way that this program goes in reference to intertwined within religion, interwoven within spirituality, interwoven between all of the duality agenda, the duality program, all of these are tied in together, and it's difficult. This is why the I know you are, but what am I program exists. It's because there are so many other programs that exist on top of that sediment that has been existing for centuries. And I just wanted to share these examples of kind of like what really the larger conversation is. Because I personally boil it down to, we all have, and it's not as this simple, but to start off, how I was thinking about it earlier was that we all have our styles of dancing. We have a harmonic to our frequency. There are styles of living that we all have. And there's a balance to that diverse harmonics in this physical reality. There has to be some kind of divine harmony, which, how I see it, is the soul that exists within the beings who have not disconnected themselves from their soul reality. These cultures that exist throughout the earth plane play different instruments in the music of creative intelligence. Every culture has a balance of creative and destructive intelligence in their own way. The masculine potential for destructive intelligence is obvious when you understand that the man is built to protect the woman and child from what? From who? We all have our balances. We are all equal in a sense that we are all an expression of the creative intelligence. In that we exist, purely exist. What doesn't get paid attention to is how we exist to the depths, to the most individualistic archetypes, to the broadest archetypes. That's really what I want to focus on right now in reference to how we dance, our harmonics, individually and collectively and culturally. So just to get down to it, the essence of dancing in the harmonics of reality, music, love, poetry, language of experience. It's a very intricate dance in relation to the balances and the connections to the Most High Spirit. The ancient Egyptians, the Gnostics, the Inca, the Mayan, the Aztecs, the Olmecs, the Washita, the Native Americans, the Polynesian cultures, all of these people, and then some, those are just some examples, have a definite, obvious connection to spirit through their cultural practices, their ancestors, their drums, their music, their harmonics. The Egyptians built pyramids, wrote in stone. The Inca brought up Machu Picchu and Sacsayhuaman and did some of the things that even today's culture can't even understand. On purpose, this is why the university system, this is why I was saying, it can't look into the history. It can't look into the it can't look into the ancient peoples. This is the foundation to the ancient aliens agenda, the alien agenda, the technological worshipping, the university, the monkey evolution agenda. It needs to build itself up. Technology of today, ancient aliens, the new age agenda of today is the synthetic pyramids. It's the synthetic pyramid. That's what this is. The money, that is the fiat currency system. It's a pyramid of illusion. So if you can understand the balances, the connection to the stars, the connection to source, the connection to the Most High Spirit, that connection is a science. The science that is the balance of alchemy, the science and spirit. That's an actual science that gets built out of the earth itself, out of the stone being ancestors. This connection to spirit and your ancestors is obvious in many, many indigenous cultures. The connections of this story being told, the same spiritual language story, the same story being told in a different language, the same spiritual language, but in the way that we communicate through our peoples, instead of being shared over generations with the drum, you can tell that same story with the flute. That same story can be told in very many different ways. Native Americans, Egyptian, the Olmecs, the Inca, the list goes on and on and on how we are all telling this same story. That exists in the history of the indigenous Aboriginal peoples. The disconnect comes from that point to this world that we exist in today. This world that we exist in today has been overrun by a different musical group that is very obvious, different in the way that it has separated itself to such an extreme that it will act out the most heinous, inhumane acts of destruction on individuals and masses of people. When it's boiled down, like I said, and you can see this as like the general, and people say, oh, you're generalizing. No, this is the essence of this. I know you are, but what am I program? So it goes into like even how you can say that, well, all white people can't dance. Well, that's just not true. It's not true. For the most part, it's not true. There are some individuals that dance very well. But overall, in reference to the storyline of, well, all black people can play basketball and do football and play football and all black people can dance. that whole essence, that's just not true. But there is some truth to both, which is why it exists. Yes, from my observational experience, most white people can't dance. They can't. There's a movement there. Now, when I'm saying that, like this, I say like this is what it boils down to. It's like saying like, in reference to this topic, it's wrong to really say all white people are destructive, just as it's wrong to say that all black people are whatever gets thrown out there, because the individual, when you go down, it's incomparable. But you cannot, just because the individual and the collective or the cultural experience is incomparable, you cannot throw all of the perspectives out of the window. You can't throw all of those observations out to the side and act like it doesn't exist, because it doesn't pertain to the individual. But there is a connection to how it pertains to the greater story, the bigger storyline. That disconnect, that lack of going into depth, this is like the crease in the brain that gets filled with plaque of separation and ignorance. The creases in the brain that get filled with the synthetic version of reality. The creases in the brain that get filled with emotional baggage and just overall washing and watering everything down to just get through the day. This separation that has happened within the community, the individual community and the collective community, needs to be understood. And the separation between these two need to be understood. And it needs to come from not only the people who have been genocided and massacred, but more so from the individuals who are the descendants of the people who have who have acted on these genocides and massacres, and who to this day still reap the benefits of that genocide and massacre. That is at the essence of all of these storylines that exist. And until that happens, real change will not fucking move. That is the biggest issue, in my opinion, in what is happening throughout all of these agendas, is because people do not want to go into those bloody pages of human history. This is some of the examples of the I know you are, but what am I? Kinda, in a sense, because this shit exists at some level. And I just wanted to share the examples of it. I don't like using the labels because the labels are heavily like leaking with like religious connotations and all kinds of other stuff right now. I feel that there's something more. There's something more to the story, and if I label it, it's kind of like narrowing that story down to something that has more something else there that I haven't yet uncovered yet. So for example purposes, I will use the labels. Obviously, I use a language to speak. We have to use this to understand. And over time, I'll get it to where I'm getting at. And there have been people who they formalize what they believe in and they say it. So, and I agree to some extent with the majority of like what gets said. For some, I mean, everybody has their own perspective. If you can see how it all exists, then okay. So I'm sure most of you already read this comment, but I'll go down to the bottom of it. They stole our identity because that was the only way to take over the world. They had to become us and vice versa. Everything that the devil does is just an imitation of what the Most High had already naturally created. That's how you know whites get technology from the devil. So, take the truth out of it without getting emotional and without having that shut down response, which is natural for me too when I read this. But then I realized that exists, and then I want to understand. My thing is about understanding for me personally, and why I share these videos at the same time. I want to help people understand, just as I am helping myself understand how this human story exists as we interact with each other and individually on the soul level. I want to understand what all this stuff is, understand and overstand all of this. How religion relates to this, why genocides and massacres happen, why all of this stuff has happened, and the emotional response of, well, just because it makes me feel uncomfortable, I don't want to look at it, or I don't, the rest of it gets thrown out. That's the problem that I want to get through, at least with this one video. And just share the depths. Just go into the depths of what's really going on here. And also take a look at the way the stories get addressed, the way the stories get avoided, the way the information gets lost in the sauce, because the sauce, the emotional sauce, is just too overwhelming. Also by design. This is why the New Age community exists. The whole love and light community, that whole perspective, that artificial oneness, this technology, that's what technology is. And the whole simulationism, the simulation theory, that's being pushed out by Elon Musk and all these other technological heads, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Michio Kaku, Ray Kurzweil, all these, Bill Nye, all these evolution monkey mind people. The way the monkey mind evolution theory itself is to water down. That's the artificial oneness. We all come from monkeys. It's that simple. Don't look any further. It has nothing to do with races. Races are all the same. All that shit, that's fucking bogus. But that's part of a very definite mind control program that exists. My question is, why? Why the fuck does that exist? Why does the alien agenda exist? Why does the New Age program exist? Because all of those programs exist to water down who you are and who your ancestors were and what has happened to the people here. That's why technology is being pushed and transhumanism is being pushed at the expense of ancient technology, ancient history, ancient peoples. This is why the New Age agenda, it's an out for the slave masters. It's an out for this. This just plays into the understanding of this comment. Lucifer said when he was expelled from heaven that he will put his kingdom over his father's kingdom. If blacks and ancestors are whites, who that make them. You are a product of your environment. That's why they are turning people homosexual with TV and music. Okay, this goes on. Every holiday in American is pagan, homage to Satan. The so-called Jews in Palestine are not Jew at all, but Germans and Russians. Blacks are the bloodline of prophets. So what does that make? So what does that make? Whites. So the understanding of that question to take the emotion out of it for this moment. I know how it feels. Believe me, I know how it feels because I felt that the first time I read it. And then I hear this from so many other different people saying the same thing. And like I said, some white people can dance, but most white people can't dance. There's something missing there. Same thing goes for when they say all black people can dance. And that's not true. It's taking an individual story and a collective story or a cultural story and mixing them together because ultimately we're just too fucking lazy or emotional to realize the understanding of the situation, the understanding and the overstanding. So for this fucking moment, I'm going to share how I feel about it without the defense mechanisms that happen out there that they exist in individuals, and collectively I listed off what they were. These were the collective defense mechanisms are technology, which is you can see where this comes from. The New Age community is all but 90+% white. When you look at all these Western gurus or these yoga pants, it's the Western yoga. You can taste what this is. The New Age community, Ancient Aliens. Look at all those people who are on there on Ancient Aliens telling you that everything came from Ancient Aliens. Look at everybody in these everything that is New Age. It's in the 90th percentile of white people, for lack of a better word. I'm just going to use these labels right now because I'm tired of having to whatever. Anyway, so that is existing, in my opinion, largely because there's no culture there. There's no connection to the ancestors. So the ancestors have, that's true. There's no connection because there's something in the way. There are storylines in the way of connecting to those storylines. And that chapter that's in the way exists at the expense of the rest of the people, the actual majority of the people of the planet, the indigenous and aboriginal people of the planet. That's the history that doesn't want to be looked at by the so-called white community. So, in order to hide that, the amplification of the Western civilization, the distraction of Hollywood, the distraction of the music industry, the distraction of the fiat currency system, the enslavement of the maritime admiralty system, the enslavement of the prison industrial complex, the enslavement of the military industrial complex, the enslavement of the colonization program, the invention of the Ancient Aliens perspective, the invention of the secret space program, alien agenda, the invention of the transhumanism movement, the invention of the evolution theory, the invention of the Big Bang, the invention of the globe model was all installed by that same group of people in order to hide the chapters that exist on the bones of the indigenous and the aboriginal people on this earth plane. It exists to hide these storylines. And if we don't look at these storylines that exist within the creases of the collective mind, the collective brain, then we will fail to see how fucking enslaved we are. Because, like I said, it's not the individual. It's not as cut and dry as the collective story is for the individual as the individual story is for the collective or culture. It's not as cut and dry as that. Because we all know that there are puppeteers behind the puppets. So my question is, who the fuck and what, or for a better word, what entities are behind that scenario? Because how I see it is that the separation needs to occur in order for entities to manifest in that chosen reality. The separation from your spirit needs to be amplified in order for disembodied entities to take over. This goes for the individual and the collective, because the desensitization program is very alive. I just listed off of the majority of how this stuff exists. And if we don't look at the reasons why, like a lot of the videos I talk about is the what of the separation program, and the tone of it is why. But this is to focus on the why of that separation program. And also, side note, as the how it gets defended, how that why gets defended. Because the what of these stories is very obvious. Even the conspiracy theorists go into, all the list goes on and on and on about, what exists and all this other stuff out there. You already know that. But for this video, why and how? So some people have their explanations of what, and the labels are hard for people to digest. That's fine, that's whatever. But I want to focus more on the information. So one obvious thing that happens is that the I know you are, but what am I is a part of this oneness perspective and not understanding our actual storyline as a whole, individually and collectively. The way we close that gap and the way we want to make those emotions feel better for ourselves and for everybody else, we have to create an expansion or outside version of that artificial oneness defense mechanism and act it out in some kind of way. The generic version, or the overall generic watered down collective version is, like I said, technology, this new age artificial oneness anchored in the alien root system and the aliens and all that stuff, and it just throws religion and all those stories out of the window. It doesn't even recognize the genocide and massacres and the indigenous peoples and the cultures. It only talks about what they've put together. Ancient Aliens doesn't go into the Egyptian or the Gnostic storylines. They focus only on Sumer, only on Zechariah Sitchin and Eric von Daniken. And in reference to the indigenous people, they only talk about the structures, connections to the Orion constellation. They only talk about the structures to back up their own separation storyline. Just as much as NASA wants to distract you from what's going on the Earth plane, they want to tell you we went to the fucking moon in '69 right after civil rights to distract you from that shit, to take the power back. And now this version today of that program is, oh, let's go to Mars. And everybody's asking, why the fuck are you spending billions and billions of dollars every damn year to go to Mars, put all this money into Mars, and you got starving kids on the street right now? You can't ask those questions. Why? Because that's the outside of this worshiping of the church of NASA, the church of the New Age agenda, the church of technology, the church of fiat, the church of illusion. This is why you can't ask these questions. This is why you can't bring this shit up. Because if you start doing that, you will start to unravel the covers to the books of the bloody chapters that are right in the right 2 minutes ago. Slavery in the United States was 2 minutes ago. All of these programs, the technology, the university system, the globe model, the evolution program, they all exist. CERN, all that opening up interdimensional doorways and all this other shit. They want to build up this illusion so you can believe in the glory of the system overall. The glory is built on bones. The glory of that system is built on blood, genocide, and massacres. And until we start to recognize that shit, we'll still be living in a fucking illusion. I don't care how you paint the walls of that illusion. You can paint the walls of that illusion with stars and unicorns and fairies and mermaids and whatever the fuck you want. You can paint anything on those walls of illusion. That blood will still exist. You will be walking on those bones, swimming in that blood, the blood of the ancestors. It doesn't fucking matter what you paint on the wall. You need to look at these stories and put them first before all this other like, oh, we're all the same, we're all oneness. No, fuck that shit. I'm not starting there. I understand the essence of spirit existing in all beings in this system. I understand that. But that is also part of the watered down program that actually is counterproductive if you don't at first understand the balances of nature, the balances of humanity, the balances of the duality program, the balances of this earth plane as a whole, the balances of the people, the balances of the culture. That needs to come first. Then you will obviously and more directly understand what that soul expression is of the Most High Spirit and why things are the way they are. First of all, you have to understand the things that are. There are things that exist in some cultures, in some peoples that do not exist in other peoples. So, that was to kind of set the space of understanding for how murky it is for a lot of the emotions that get into understanding these questions, because the defense mechanism is it's just dry. And it's this killing you with kindness that I've mentioned in previous videos. It kills you with kindness. So the colonial program said they were bringing Christianity. They were bringing your savior. They were getting you closer to God. The Native Americans, we gave you religion. We gave you technology. You have a smartphone. You have minimum wage. You have all of this stuff, and you guys don't appreciate us. Shut the fuck up with all that bullshit. Like, we gave you the Constitution. Oh yeah? Where'd you get that from? The Iroquois Confederacy? The Native Americans? You don't never want to mention that shit. Well, we gave you dinosaurs. Fucking lie. We gave you the moon. We went to fucking lie. What we gave you the university so your kids go to college. Shut that shit up. We gave you protection with the military. You are blowing up babies. But we protect your streets with the police. Those are slave chasers. The descendants of slave chasers. You gave us the prison industrial complex where you lock up all our brothers and sisters because of the fear program that's amplified in that system. See, when it all boils down to, and you go into Dr. Francis Cress Welsing's storyline, and then also start to see why this stuff exists. In order to have that, see, the flute that gets played in so-called white culture has a very definite and more extreme version of destruction. There is a separation there that gap is wider than the indigenous people. To make it as plain as possible, that needs to be understood. See, the defense mechanism for that is fear and niceness. So you won't look at that gap of separation. So the gap is destruction, genocide, massacres, distraction, trickster magic, illusion. That stuff exists in the ancestors of the so-called white people that has added up to the enslavement of the entire earth plane. Right now, in this moment. That is a very definite program. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't exist in other cultures. What I'm saying is that magic, that style of interaction exists in the infrastructure of the power design that is today. The defense mechanism for that is fear. The defense mechanism, this is why you have the military-industrial complex. This is why you have all of that shit going around, is because they are afraid of being vulnerable, of being revealed, of being wiped out, pretty much. Because that fear is, like I said, if you go into Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, you will understand that it goes down to the very genetics of white people ultimately being bred out of civilization. Eventually, that's just, even in your science books, your professors will understand this. There is a genetic, I can't remember the word, genetic, for lack of a better word, disposition in the white gene pool, to where if you have a white woman and a black man, you're going to have a black baby or a brown baby. If you have a white man and a black woman, you're going to have a black baby or a brown baby. It will be brown, black, brown. It will be until you go into the future, Marty McFly into the future, and realize that if that were to happen, which is already happening, eventually this whole earth plane will be black and brown. So my question is, so the defense mechanism for that is to create these illusions for that not to happen, for that to be slowed down, is Planned Parenthood. The defense mechanism is the eugenics program. The defense mechanism is the white supremacy program, the colonial program, the genocide, the massacres, the prison industrial complex. That's a defense mechanism to all of those storylines. The defense mechanism for the defense mechanism is, but we're so nice. We give you all of this. Look, we invented all of this. Everything you have is from Albert Einstein. Everything you have is from Thomas Edison. Everything that you have is from your forefathers. Christopher Columbus. We're so nice. Abraham Lincoln. So how that sentiment gets acted out in the individuals who are of the collective, who are not necessarily part of that overall storyline of destruction. So this is zeroing back to the individual. Like I said, it doesn't, how I don't see it, it doesn't go straight into the individuals. It does exist in their ancestral bloodline. So it does exist in the, I'm not saying it doesn't exist in the individual. I'm saying there are ways that it gets expressed more openly in some individuals. Like you will have people out there right now somebody is going outside. There's a white man who has a gun who wants to go kill a black man or a black person. Because of what? So many reasons why. The opposite is true. But the opposite is not true when you expand it to the collective and realize that, hey, who's doing the genocides? Who's doing the massacres? Now, I'll get into that in a second, because the defense mechanism to that is the I know you are, but what am I? Which is in this place. And then I don't know, I'm just kind of going all over the place with it right now. But so there is much in your comment that I agree with, but do you really think that blacks being the bloodline of prophets equates to whites being the bloodline of serpent? Is it really just so simple, cut and dry to accept that kind of thinking? So there's that sort of like, I don't know the answer, but you're clearly wrong in some kind of way, instead of whatever, you know how I'm feeling in that space. And then unfortunately, he says, unfortunately, yes, the proof is in the pudding. Just ask Bill Cosby. Basically, if someone is not the devil, but always doing evil shit, they must be lying. Just like if your girl says she not a whore, but having sex with everyone you know, you will be labeled as a damn fool and laughing, and the laughing stock to all, like Jerry Springer's show. So if you say whites are not the bloodline of the devil, then why they keep doing the most evil shit, the evil in the world, like creating diseases, drugs, and bombing innocent women and kids that's not of the Most High. You can't debate me, because right now I'm not okay. You can go, but yeah, this stuff exists. The technology, the genocide, the bombing, the drugs, the diseases, the Planned Parenthood, the vaccines, all this stuff, you can trace it, just like you can trace a lot of this stuff back to the money. Well, go a step even further. Who are these bankers? This so-called 1%. If we don't look at this storyline and see how the fuck this exists and take it a step further, if you get caught in that box program, like I was saying in previous videos about getting caught up in the protest program of, well, thinking that's just it. No, it's not just it. There's a spiritual essence to these storylines. And if we don't question that reality, we won't know. We won't know what that is. So this is another example of that defense mechanism, and I'll go into it in a second to expand it even further, because these comments, more I talk about race, the more it gets expanded even further. So Carlito says again, if everyone thought like that, evil wouldn't have anywhere to hide. You're on the right track now. Just make the connection to religion. Then you will know that blacks are in hell and whites are demons. A great white man once said, we don't burn crosses on niggers' yards because we hate niggers. We do it to signify the coming of the glory of the Lord. Yes, that man was a KKK member, but he gave me the biggest clue of who the devil is, and now it all makes sense. Jesus equals 666. Welcome to hell on earth. He is here. Slavery wasn't shut. Slavery wasn't shut, man. Buckle your seatbelt. Okay. So there's a feeling there. There's like Carlito's not the only one that thinks like or feels like this. There's something to these storylines when you understand the intent behind putting poison in your water, putting poison in your food, the poisonous fiat currency system, the poison that is the military industrial complex, the poison that is the prison industrial complex. This affects the entire earth plane right now. Right now in this moment, this exists. So my question is, why? Why? This is a part of the magic of the so-called white culture in some kind of way. Now, I'm not saying, like I said, not all people are like this or experience this, but there's something to this storyline. Yes, I understand there are entities behind the scenes working to expand the separation between the cultures of the human races. What I'm saying is that there are also reasons how these entities got into these gaps, just as much as I was saying, in order to be, you can have these people do this most heinous shit is because they have separated themselves from their soul. Just like when you beat down and destroy or whatever an individual, they're not that same person anymore. And since they're not the body, that has to do with some of the energies of the soul. What is that? The separation, what is that? That's what I'm saying. Now that what is that is very known by the entities behind the scene, and they have known that for centuries, and they have utilized that magic through the collective to act out what we are experiencing today. So in us not knowing that what, and these energies behind the scene very well informed about that what, and those balances of the medicine wheel people, the people of the medicine wheel, the people as a whole, the entities behind the scene, they know what this is. So it's used against us through our own experiences. Like I said, there are very definite styles of dancing, destruction, separation, trickster magic, and what we are experiencing today is very a part of the individuals who have manifested into this reality for whatever reason. I don't know these reasons. I'm still discovering it for myself to see what the fuck is going on here. And if we just defend ourselves by our emotions, we won't ever know. So this is another defense. Every nation on the plane has been enslaved at one point or another by all types of people and races. While the black people were enslaved in the U.S., the Irish were being eradicated by the British. And at the same time, the survivors offered into slavery. Irish slaves were cheap and plentiful. Black slavery was more expensive. Irish slaves were given away. Black slaves were costly. So your generalization needs a tremendous amount of further study. So that's a dead end. It's just a dead end. Where are you going to go after that? People are formed, they're set in their understandings. It's like, it's the I know you are, but what am I? It's we did this, and then but you did this too, and then, instead of really understanding the layer behind that layer. So the next, another example of what happened in USSR was a so-called white man killing and enslaved 30 million plus of his white brothers. It's not so black and white. The oligarchy don't care much about the white man either. Our enemy deceives us all on the mental plane, and one of his main weapons is division. Started back in Babylon with languages, then color, race, religions, and nowadays income status. Okay. You can pause and read this because this is just an example. It's just an expansion of that last comment I read, which is it's at one layer. It's just saying, okay, yes, 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 we understand this, but, you know, it's the oneness. It's the nice, it's still in the emotional grid of understanding. It's like he said, humans of all races and colors suffer, some groups more than others. I agree, but false rhetoric fails. Oh, I don't know that false rhetoric and hate speech. False rhetoric and hate speech don't help the situation. We are strong in numbers. Fighting each other will only help enemies stay in power. So my question is, who is that enemy? What is that enemy? And what is that stuff? See, that stuff just gets thrown around. That's the other side to this artificial oneness. We all have one common enemy. Okay, zero this shit down and understand what the history is. What has happened? Take each chapter, because just saying we're all one, we're all races are all the same, and that's not reading the entire book. That's generalizing to a large extent the entire story, and just as easily as generalizing saying all white people are all evil and all that stuff, like and all black people or whatever. I mean, that's an overgeneralization for not really understanding the depths of the actual words in those chapters of that book. And it's more comfortable to be that way because everybody wants to be nice. Everybody wants to be cool. Fuck that. I know people are not going to be nice to me and all that stuff in this video. I don't give a fuck about that because this is how I feel. And if I already feel this way and I'm still on my path of understanding, then I'm going to fucking share that. And this shit exists. The extreme to this, and it gets like, it's very intellectual, like it's very quoting Thomas More at the end, and then to put a stamp on it, P.S. do cracker means nigger? I don't know. Was that word created to enslave the psychology of an entire race of people? It's not the fucking same. Not when you understand the depths of where that word comes from, what it means at its essence, and how it was flipped upside down and used against people today. This storyline, any storyline, this is not the fucking same. I don't give a shit how nice you of a person you are. This is the stuff. It's the stuff that dreams are made of. Literally. This is how ridiculous. This is how far that those gaps have been installed into people. The emotional world, the lack of understanding, the watering down of storylines manifesting into hate. See, like when I'm addressing white people or the white story or whatever that is, I am speaking in reference to the information, the storylines. I want to know what the fuck is going on. What has happened? If we get caught up in our emotions, then we won't allow ourselves to go into the depths of understanding of what has happened. I know you are, but what am I? This is not a coincidence. This picture right here, this is not a coincidence. It's not a mistake that people don't give a fuck about Haiti or Papua New Guinea or Kenya. Haiti. Papua New Guinea, Kenya, Nigeria, the indigenous people. It's not a mistake that people come all up in arms about France, Paris, and the homosexual community. There's an intention there. Ask yourself why. Ask yourself how long this has existed. Ask yourself why does that exist, to protect what? How does that exist in your subconscious mind? How does that exist in the subconscious mind of your child? How does that expand into the subconscious mind of your child? How does that grow into the conscious reality of your child? A society that keeps cures a secret so they can continue to sell medication for huge profits is not a real society, but a huge mental asylum. The Western world runs the entire earth plane, the illusion of the earth plane that is today. What is the Western world manifested from? The colonial program, the supremacy program, the genocide and the massacres of the Native American and Aboriginal American peoples, the colonization of Africa, the colonization of Australia, the colonization of the Polynesian people, the attempted colonization of Asia, the list goes on and on and on. And eventually, the colonization of the entire earth plane with the illusion of the fiat currency system, the illusion of the globe model, the illusion of technology, the illusion of who and what we are, this watered down, monkey mind human story. There's an intent there. All of that stuff that I just listed off exists on top of the same mindset that came when Christopher Columbus came to the shores and told everybody here, hey, we got this new God, this new book. Y'all gotta listen to this shit, and if you don't, you're some fucking savages and primitives. Oh, they're just primitive savages. We need to give them some freedom. That was the essence back in that day. They need some freedom. So, the same story. My question is why? How does this exist? If you go into the perspectives of Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, you'll see one very obvious reason why when I was talking about the genetic annihilation and the protection of a particular, that is part of the story. I don't give a shit how fucking nice you are. You need to understand that fucking exists in the subconscious mind. And if you don't think that it doesn't manifest into this reality in some kind of way, I obviously see, and many other people obviously see, that it is manifested into the expansion of the colonial program with the genocides, with the massacres. That is not universal. I don't give a shit how many, you can talk about all the Irish slaves you want. You are talking about pennies in comparison to the fucking $1 billion profit game set out by this system within the colonial program throughout history. This same essence, the same shit that happened to Bill Cosby. Why you hear Bill Cosby, even in this, you hear a joke every fucking day about Bill Cosby. The majority of the shit that he came under are just allegations. I'm not defending that man in any, I don't know his storyline. I wasn't around him. I don't know any of that stuff. What I'm saying is that there's actual shit that Roman Polanski has admitted to. And this motherfucker wins an Oscar. Do you think that would happen? The same thing at the time I mentioned Robert Downey Jr. and his fucking cocaine extravaganza, and then comes back as fucking Iron Man. You think that would happen? These are examples of the supremacy program existing, and this is just the icing on the cake of what the fuckness that exists out there. And then people get caught up in the icing and say, "Oh well, that doesn't exist. That's not." Celebrating genocide and massacres. Why? Because if you question that, you will be seen as some kind of terrorist or something like that. You know why? Because these are criminals who run this Western program. Criminals, pirates who run the Maritime Admiralty system. Pirates who run the fiat currency system. And it's all joked about in kindness. Installed, you see these alien commercials. You are being systematically programmed every moment of the day. From what you see on social media down to the food and the water that your babies drink and eat. There's an intention behind this shit. We have to find out what that intention is and question it instead of getting caught up in our fucking emotions and just saying, well, everybody's the same. Fuck that. The story is more complex than that. After millennia of worshipping African divinities from the Nile, the insecure Greco-Romans invented Christianity with the specific agenda to demonize the African race and usher in the Europoid supremacist myth. Its lies not only psychologically empowered the Europoid, but it ensured the subjugated Africans' self-hatred. Expand that towards the entire indigenous Aboriginal culture. Magnify it to today and realize that this is why you have white kings and queens in African movies. This is why the storylines exist the way they do, to amplify the white culture and demonize every other culture. The Columbus idea exists to hide the fact that there were Aboriginal black Aboriginal people all over the world before Christopher Columbus was even fucking born. When they got to the Americas, they just paper genocided everybody and told them, hey, you're now Native American or African American or Negro or whatever they invented. This is why these stories exist, to hide the fucking gold, to hide the true essence of the people and water everybody down and say everybody's fucked up, everybody's destructive, everybody is like we say we are, that we act, everybody is like us, the destructive military industrial complex technology worshipping culture, everybody's like us, and that's just how it is, so we're just gonna have to deal with it. Like, really? No, you're a fucking liar. That's bullshit. Why don't you talk about the ancient people? Why don't you go into these stories? Why? This is why Ancient Aliens doesn't want to talk about the Gnostics, the ancient people. They don't want to go into the spirit. They want to worship the science and technology. So they installed the New Age agenda, installed CERN, installed the NASA program, installed all of these artificial religions to further separate people, installed all of these programs, desensitizing people from revolting, desensitizing people from spiritually revolting, desensitizing people from even questioning their reality, accepting this. This is not a universal thing that you are looking at right now. This is very specific. The distraction is all over the place. There's an essence that exists that our ancient ancestors in ancient Egypt and in the ancient cultures that were still connected to spirit, that were not focused on the enslavement, genocide, and massacre, destruction, illusion program that is manifested into today. This is why you have the so-called 1% and the 99%. That is not natural. That is not universal. How the fuck can you say everybody's all the same and all this other stuff, that whole Irish slaves defense mechanism to that's like it's fucking ridiculous. So, getting to the elements, getting back to who and what we are, understanding that. But first, we have to understand, start wiping this blood off of our eyes, this blood off of our bodies, and understand why that blood is there before we start answering all these questions about like, well, everybody's one and all that. Yeah, okay. You want to eat that ham and cheese sandwich? Go on ahead. You will have a short lifespan. And it will be sick and diseased. Full of parasites. We are not all the same. There is a divinity to our differences. Just as there is a divinity to the differences between the divine masculine and the divine feminine. That divinity is being manipulated to be controlled. This is why you have the gay agenda and all that other watered down programs that are out there to make you believe in this artificial oneness. So these are just some examples of this murky ass fucking storyline that still exists out there. So I'm sure I'll go into this a little further in a different video, but until then, Thank you for joining me. Till next time, peace, love. From all my relations, peace, love, and harmony.